Sometimes the person you hate the most is the one who loved you the deepest. Rain hammered against black umbrellas as Olivia Hayes stood beside her mother's grave, her fingers trembling around a single white rose already soaked through by the storm. The cemetery sat on the edge of Portland's West Hills, silent except for distant thunder and the soft murmur of condolences that meant nothing to her anymore. 3 years ago, Olivia still believed life could surprise people in beautiful ways. Now she knew better. Now she knew wealthy men made promises they never intended to keep, especially men like Sebastian Vale. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop near the cemetery gates, and every whisper around her instantly changed direction. Olivia didn't need to look up to know who had arrived. Her stomach tightened anyway. Sebastian Vale stepped out into the rain wearing a charcoal overcoat worth more than most people's rent, his dark hair damp from the weather, his expression unreadable as cameras flashed from a distance beyond the gates. Billionaire tech founder, America's favorite self-made success story, and the man Olivia had spent 3 years trying to erase from her heart. He moved slowly toward the funeral crowd, ignoring the rain collecting on his shoulders. Some people stepped aside out of respect, others out of fear. Sebastian Vale had that effect on people. But Olivia only felt anger rising in her chest like fire. Her mother had adored him once, called him the son she never had. And then one night, he vanished without explanation. No goodbye, no call, no wedding, just silence. Silence while her mother got sicker. Silence while hospital bills piled up on their kitchen counter. Silence while Olivia sat alone in waiting rooms praying for miracles that never came. Sebastian finally stopped a few feet away from her. His eyes met hers for the first time in 3 years, and something inside Olivia nearly broke from the force of it. Because despite everything, those eyes still looked at her the same way. Like she mattered. Like she always would. "Olivia," he said quietly, his voice rougher than she remembered. She stared at him in disbelief. "You don't get to say my name anymore." The rain intensified around them. Somewhere behind her, a branch creaked in the wind. Sebastian opened his mouth as if he wanted to explain something, but Olivia was already shaking her head. "You left," she whispered. "My mother spent months asking where you were. Do you know what that did to her?" His jaw tightened painfully. "I never wanted to hurt either of you." Olivia let out a hollow laugh. That's funny coming from a billionaire who disappeared the second life became inconvenient. The words hit harder than she intended, but Sebastian didn't defend himself. He just stood there in the rain, absorbing every ounce of hatred she threw at him. And somehow that only made her angrier. "You should leave," she said coldly. "Before I forget, this is a funeral." For a moment, he looked like he might say something else. Something important. Instead, he slowly reached into his coat pocket and placed a small velvet box beside the flowers near her mother's grave. Olivia frowned instantly. "What is that?" Sebastian looked at the grave before answering softly. "Something I should have given you a long time ago." Then he turned and walked back into the storm before Olivia could stop him. Olivia did not open the velvet box until after midnight. The apartment was painfully quiet now without her mother's oxygen machine humming in the background or the soft sound of old jazz drifting from the kitchen radio. Rain tapped against the windows as she sat alone at the edge of the couch, still wearing the black funeral dress she had been too exhausted to change out of. For a long moment, she only stared at the small box resting in her lap, like it carried something dangerous inside. Then finally she opened it. Her breath caught instantly. Inside was a silver key. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. Just a tiny engraved tag with 4 numbers on it. Unit 214. Olivia frowned in confusion. Sebastian always had a reason for everything. That was one of the things she used to love about him. Even the smallest gestures meant something. But tonight she was too emotionally drained for riddles. She almost tossed the box aside before noticing something folded beneath the velvet lining. A receipt, dated 3 years ago. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unfolded it. Portland Memorial Hospital. Intensive care unit. Visitor denied. The name printed at the bottom made her chest tighten. Sebastian Vale. Olivia stared at the paper as memories pushed violently to the surface. 3 years ago had started beautifully. Sebastian was not yet the cold billionaire the world worshipped now. Back then he still laughed loudly in grocery stores and danced with her in the kitchen while pasta boiled over on the stove. He used to drive 3 hours just to bring her favorite cheesecake from a tiny bakery near Seattle. He remembered every small thing about her. Every coffee order. Every song she skipped in the car because it made her cry. Then her mother got sick. Everything changed after that. Hospital visits replaced date nights. Stress hollowed them both out slowly. But Sebastian had promised her they would survive it together. "I am not going anywhere," he told her one night while holding her hand in the hospital parking garage. Olivia remembered believing him completely, which was why his disappearance destroyed her. One morning, he simply stopped answering calls. His apartment sat empty. His assistant refused to explain anything. News headlines exploded days later announcing Sebastian Vale had become the youngest chief executive officer in his company's history after a sudden emergency leadership takeover. While the world celebrated him on magazine covers, Olivia sat beside her mother's hospital bed feeling abandoned in the cruelest possible way. A sharp knock at the apartment door startled her from the memory. Her best friend Rachel stepped inside carrying takeout containers and immediately froze when she saw Olivia holding the receipt. "What is that?" Rachel asked carefully. Olivia handed it over without speaking. Rachel read the paper twice before looking back up slowly. "Olivia, this says Sebastian tried visiting your mother the night she died." Olivia shook her head instantly. "No, that is impossible. Then why would he keep the receipt for 3 years?" Rachel asked softly. Olivia could not answer, because deep down something uncomfortable had already started forming inside her chest. Doubt. Small, quiet, dangerous doubt. Rachel sat beside her carefully. "Did he ever actually tell you he was leaving?" Olivia stared at the rain sliding down the dark window. The terrifying part was, no, he never did. He just disappeared. And suddenly, for the first time in 3 years, Olivia realized hatred had been easier than asking what really happened. The next morning, Olivia stood outside a narrow brick building near the waterfront, gripping the silver key tightly in her coat pocket while cold wind rushed off the Willamette River. Unit 214. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sebastian standing in the rain beside her mother's grave, looking less like a billionaire and more like a man carrying something unbearably heavy. Rachel had begged her not to come alone, but Olivia needed answers before doubt swallowed her alive. The building looked old but carefully maintained, the kind of place people passed every day without noticing. A gray-haired manager behind the front desk glanced at the key in Olivia's hand and immediately softened. "You must be Miss Hayes," he said quietly. Olivia froze. "How do you know my name?" The man hesitated before answering. "Mr. Vale rented this unit 3 years ago. He told us one day you might come." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. "What is this place?" "You should probably see it for yourself." The elevator ride to the second floor felt strangely endless. Olivia kept telling herself there had to be a simple explanation for everything. Something practical. Something cold. But the second she unlocked Unit 214 and pushed open the door, her entire body went still. It was not an apartment. It was a room frozen in time. Soft afternoon light spilled through tall windows onto shelves filled with photographs, records, handwritten notes, and framed sketches she instantly recognized as her own. Her throat tightened painfully. Every corner of the room carried pieces of her life. A dried flower from their first trip to Cannon Beach. Movie ticket stubs. Her favorite novels stacked beside a coffee mug she used to leave at Sebastian's apartment. Even her mother's handwritten recipe cards sat carefully preserved inside glass frames. Olivia stepped forward slowly like she was afraid touching anything might shatter the illusion. Then she noticed the wall. Hundreds of calendar pages pinned side by side. Every single date circled in black ink. Her birthdays. Her mother's chemotherapy appointments. The anniversary of their first kiss. 3 years of memories meticulously marked one after another. Olivia pressed a trembling hand against her mouth. "What is this?" she whispered. Near the back of the room sat an old wooden desk. On top rested a voice recorder beside dozens of sealed envelopes, all addressed to her in Sebastian's handwriting. Olivia carefully picked up the recorder and pressed play before she could stop herself. Sebastian's voice filled the room instantly. October 17th. Day 42. Olivia's breath caught. He sounded exhausted. Weaker somehow. "Physical therapy lasted 6 hours today. Doctors say I should be grateful I can walk again. Funny thing is, none of it matters because she still thinks I abandoned her." Olivia nearly dropped the recorder. Her heart pounded violently as the recording continued. "I drove to her apartment again tonight. Sat outside for almost an hour like an idiot. But I could not make myself go upstairs. Not after what my father threatened to do. Silence crackled softly through the speaker before his voice returned quieter this time. If Olivia ever learns the truth, I hope she hates me a little less. Olivia stared at the recorder in shock. Physical therapy. Threats. Truth. None of it made sense anymore. Suddenly, every memory she had spent years replaying began shifting into something unfamiliar. Something incomplete. Then her eyes landed on a framed newspaper clipping tucked beside the desk. Sebastian Vale injured in highway crash during emergency corporate transition. Olivia's knees weakened instantly as she noticed the date printed beneath the headline. It was the exact same night he disappeared from her life. Olivia could barely breathe as she lowered herself into the chair beside the desk, her eyes locked on the newspaper clipping trembling in her hands. The date would not change, no matter how many times she looked at it. October 17th. The same night Sebastian vanished from her life forever. Her mind raced violently through memories she had buried under years of anger. The unanswered calls, the empty apartment, the silence that followed. Back then she had convinced herself silence meant betrayal because believing anything else hurt too much. Slowly she reached for another recording with shaky fingers. October 23rd. Sebastian's voice said softly through the speaker. Today was the first day I remembered her phone number again. Olivia closed her eyes instantly. He sounded exhausted. Fragile. Nothing like the confident billionaire the world saw on television. The doctors say memory loss after trauma is normal. They say confusion is normal too. But forgetting her voice, he stopped speaking for a second. Olivia heard him inhale unevenly before continuing. That felt like punishment. Tears blurred her vision as the recording clicked off. Her chest ached with something unbearable now. Not hatred. Grief. Real grief for a story she never actually understood. She stood and slowly moved around the room again, noticing details she had missed before. A stack of physical therapy schedules. Prescription bottles. A cane tucked beside the bookshelf. Sebastian had hidden this entire part of his life from the world. From her. Then Olivia noticed one envelope separated from the others. Unlike the rest, this one had never been sealed. Her name written across the front looked rushed and uneven, like his hands had been shaking. She hesitated before unfolding the letter inside. Olivia, if you are reading this, then I finally found the courage to leave the truth behind somewhere you could discover it. 3 years ago my father gave me a choice. Walk away from you quietly or watch his board destroy your mother's medical coverage during the company merger investigation. I thought I could fix everything after the transition ended. Then the accident happened before I reached the hospital. By the time I woke up, months had passed and your mother was already gone. Olivia stopped reading as tears rolled silently down her cheeks. The room suddenly felt too small around her, too full of memories and regret and years wasted believing the wrong thing. She remembered sitting beside her mother during those final weeks, listening to machines beep softly in the dark, while secretly checking her phone every 10 minutes, hoping Sebastian would finally call. He never did. Or at least she thought he never did. Olivia looked down at the bottom of the letter where one final sentence waited. I called your phone 73 times after I woke up, but your number had been disconnected. Her knees nearly gave out. Rachel had changed Olivia's phone plan after the hospital bills became overwhelming. Olivia had been too emotionally numb back then to care. Dear God, Sebastian had tried to come back. A quiet knock suddenly echoed from the doorway behind her. Olivia turned sharply and froze. Sebastian stood there motionless in the dim afternoon light, still wearing the same dark overcoat from the funeral, his expression calm but tired in a way she had never noticed before. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Olivia still clutched the letter tightly in her trembling hands. Sebastian glanced briefly toward the open recorder on the desk and gave a faint, sad smile. I wondered how long it would take before you found this place. Olivia stared at him as emotions crashed violently inside her chest. Anger, confusion, heartbreak, relief. None of it made sense anymore. You lied to me, she whispered. Sebastian looked down quietly. No, he said softly. I disappeared from you. There is a difference. Olivia could not stop staring at him. For 3 years, she had imagined this moment differently 1,000 times. In every version, Sebastian Vale was cold, arrogant, untouched by what he had done to her. But the man standing in front of her now looked exhausted in a way money could not fix. There were faint shadows beneath his eyes and a quiet sadness in his expression that made him seem older than 34. Human. Real. Sebastian slowly stepped farther into the room, his gaze drifting across the shelves filled with memories neither of them had been able to let go of. I never thought you would actually come here, he admitted softly. Olivia tightened her grip around the letter. Then why give me the key? He gave a faint, humorless smile. Because your mother asked me to. Olivia froze instantly. What? Sebastian looked down for a moment before answering. I visited her once after I woke up from the coma. The room suddenly felt silent except for the rain against the windows. Olivia's heartbeat pounded loudly in her ears as Sebastian continued carefully. She was already very weak by then. I almost did not go inside because I knew she blamed me too. Olivia shook her head slowly. No, she never hated you. Sebastian's eyes softened painfully. That made it worse. He walked toward the bookshelf and gently picked up one of the framed recipe cards in Eleanor Hayes's handwriting. She asked me why I disappeared from you. I told her everything. About my father threatening the insurance coverage. About the merger investigation. About the accident. Olivia felt tears burning her eyes again. And what did she say? Sebastian stared quietly at the recipe card for several seconds before answering. She said love is not proven by staying when life is easy. It is proven by what you protect when things fall apart. Olivia looked away immediately because hearing her mother's words spoken in Sebastian's voice hurt too much. Sebastian carefully placed the card back down. Before I left the hospital that night, she made me promise something. Olivia swallowed hard. What? That I would not come back into your life until I could do it honestly. Without secrets. Without my family controlling anything anymore. He paused briefly. Your mother believed you deserved peace more than explanations. Olivia felt something inside her chest crack open completely. All these years she had carried anger like armor because it was easier than admitting she had been abandoned by the only person she ever truly trusted. But now every memory was changing shape right in front of her. Every sleepless night, every hateful thought, every moment she convinced herself she meant nothing to him. You should have told me, she whispered shakily. Sebastian looked at her with unbearable sadness. I tried. He gestured quietly toward the wall of unopened envelopes. Most of those were never mailed because every time I got close, I remembered the look on your face the day I disappeared. Olivia stared at the envelopes lined perfectly side by side. 3 years of words she never heard. 3 years of grief he carried alone too. Sebastian took a slow breath before speaking again. I watched your career from a distance. I knew when your photography exhibit opened downtown. I knew when you moved apartments last winter because the neighborhood was safer. I knew when your mother's condition worsened again. Olivia blinked at him in disbelief. You knew all of that. I knew everything, he admitted quietly. I just did not think you could ever forgive me enough to let me stand beside you again. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Olivia looked down at the letter still trembling in her hands and asked the one question she had been afraid to say out loud since entering the room. If you loved me this much, why did you come back now? Sebastian's expression shifted slightly. Not hopeful, not confident, just honest. Because your mother made me promise one more thing before she died. Olivia's breath caught. Sebastian met her eyes softly. She told me one day the truth would hurt you more than the lie. But you deserved it anyway. Olivia sat down slowly beside the window because her legs no longer trusted her to stand. Outside, rain continued sliding down the glass in silver streaks while the city beyond the river blurred into soft gray light. Everything felt unreal now. The anger she had carried for 3 years suddenly felt heavy and misplaced, like she had built an entire life around a version of Sebastian that never truly existed. Sebastian remained near the bookshelf, giving her space the way he always used to when he sensed she was overwhelmed. That small familiar habit nearly broke her heart all over again. Why did your father care so much about us? Olivia finally asked quietly. Sebastian exhaled slowly before answering. Because my family built their company on reputation. The merger investigation was already destroying investor confidence. When the board discovered your mother's hospital debt and your connection to me, he looked away briefly. They saw weakness, scandal, something they could use against me. Olivia frowned. That is insane. It is wealth, Sebastian corrected softly. Sometimes they are the same thing. The bitterness in his voice surprised her. For the first time, she realized Sebastian had not escaped his world simply because he became successful inside it. He had survived it. Sebastian walked toward the desk and opened one of the drawers carefully before pulling out a small photograph. He handed it to her without speaking. Olivia stared at it in silence. It was a picture of her asleep in a hospital chair beside her mother's bed years ago. Her head rested against Sebastian's shoulder while his arm wrapped protectively around her. Someone must have taken it without them noticing. On the back, in Sebastian's handwriting, were 4 simple words. "My favorite place to be." Olivia's vision blurred instantly again. "I remember that night," she whispered. "My mother could not stop apologizing for becoming a burden." Sebastian nodded faintly. "She cried after you fell asleep." Olivia pressed the photo carefully against her chest. "She loved you." "I loved her too," he admitted quietly. "She made me feel like family long before I knew what that meant." The room fell silent again. But this silence felt different from the silence that destroyed them years ago. Softer somehow. Sadder. Honest. Olivia looked toward the wall of unopened envelopes once more. "Did you really write to me every week?" Sebastian gave a small nod. "Sometimes every day. Why never send them?" He hesitated before answering. "Because after the accident, I was not the same person anymore." Olivia frowned slightly. Sebastian slowly rolled up the sleeve of his sweater, revealing a long, faded surgical scar near his wrist. "The doctors were not sure I would fully recover. There were months I could barely walk alone. Months I forgot entire conversations 10 minutes after they happened." Olivia stared at him in stunned silence. She remembered every headline from that year praising Sebastian Vale for returning stronger than ever after a mysterious medical leave. None of them mentioned this. None of them mentioned how broken he really was. "I thought if I came back to you half-healed and still trapped inside my family's control," he swallowed carefully, "I would only ruin your life twice." Olivia's chest tightened painfully. 3 years. 3 entire years, both of them suffering separately because love had become tangled inside fear and pride and impossible choices. Olivia looked down at the photograph, trembling slightly in her hands before asking the question she had been afraid to ask since he walked into the room. "Did you ever stop loving me?" Sebastian answered so quickly it almost hurt. "No, just one word. Simple. Certain. Completely unguarded." Olivia closed her eyes because hearing the truth after so many years felt strangely unbearable. Then Sebastian reached into his coat pocket slowly and pulled out something small wrapped carefully in tissue paper. He placed it gently on the desk between them. Olivia stared at the familiar velvet ring box from the cemetery. Sebastian's voice lowered almost to a whisper. "There is something inside that I should have given you 3 years ago." Olivia stared at the velvet box resting between them, as if opening it might finally break whatever fragile barrier still existed inside her chest. Outside, the rain had softened into a quiet drizzle, and pale evening light drifted through the windows of Unit 214, wrapping the room in a strange calm neither of them fully trusted yet. Sebastian remained standing across from her with his hands folded tightly, like he was bracing himself for impact. Olivia slowly reached for the box. Her fingers trembled before she finally lifted the lid. Inside sat a delicate diamond ring beside a folded piece of paper, yellowed slightly at the edges with age. Her breath caught instantly. "You kept it all this time?" she whispered. Sebastian nodded once. "I could not throw it away." Olivia unfolded the paper carefully and recognized the handwriting immediately. Sebastian's. But this version felt younger somehow. Hopeful. Less guarded. "Olivia, if everything goes right tonight, I am going to ask you to spend the rest of your life with me." Her vision blurred before she could continue reading. Sebastian looked away quietly as she kept going. "I know things are difficult right now. I know your mother is sick and the future feels terrifying. But every version of my future still has you in it." Olivia pressed her lips together hard, trying to steady herself. "You wrote this before the accident?" Sebastian's voice was soft. "An hour before." Olivia looked down at the ring sparkling faintly beneath the fading light. 3 years ago, she had believed Sebastian disappeared because success mattered more to him than love. Meanwhile, he had been driving toward her with an engagement ring in his pocket. The realization hurt in ways she could not describe. "I hated you," she admitted shakily. "Every single day, I hated you." Sebastian gave a faint, sad smile. "I know. Sometimes I would see your face on magazine covers and feel physically sick. I know that too." Olivia looked up at him with tears filling her eyes. Why are you being so calm about this? For the first time, something inside Sebastian's expression cracked slightly. Because if I were you, Olivia, I probably would have hated me too. The honesty in his voice hit harder than anger ever could. Olivia stood abruptly and walked toward the windows, trying to catch her breath. Portland's skyline shimmered softly across the river while headlights reflected against wet streets below. She remembered sitting alone in tiny apartments over the last 3 years, convincing herself she had been easy to leave behind. Forgettable, temporary. But now every painful memory had another side she never saw. My mother knew, Olivia whispered suddenly. Sebastian stayed silent behind her. That is why she never let me talk badly about you. Her throat tightened painfully. Even near the end, she still defended you. Sebastian moved closer but stopped several feet away, giving her room to breathe. She believed people sometimes destroy themselves trying to protect the people they love. Olivia laughed weakly through tears. That sounds exactly like her. Silence settled again between them, but now it carried grief instead of resentment. Shared grief. Shared loss. After a long moment, Olivia turned back toward him slowly. What happens now? Sebastian looked genuinely surprised by the question. I do not know, he admitted honestly. I did not come here expecting forgiveness. Olivia glanced down at the ring still resting in her hand. 3 years frozen inside one tiny object. 3 years of words unsent and feelings buried alive. Then her eyes drifted toward the stack of envelopes on the desk. How many letters are there? Sebastian followed her gaze. 38. Olivia swallowed hard. And every single one was for me. Every single one. Olivia stood there quietly for several seconds before finally asking the question neither of them was prepared for. Will you read them to me? For a moment, Sebastian did not answer. He simply stared at Olivia like he was afraid he misunderstood her. The room remained perfectly still around them except for the quiet sound of rainwater dripping somewhere outside the building. Olivia tightened her grip around the ring box resting against her palm. Please, she whispered softly. I spent 3 years believing the worst version of you. I do not want to keep living inside a lie. Something fragile shifted in Sebastian's expression then. Not relief exactly. Something deeper. Like hope returning to a place it had not visited in a very long time. Slowly he walked toward the desk and picked up the first envelope from the stack. His fingers lingered over her name written carefully across the front before he opened it. November 2nd, he read quietly. Today, physical therapy lasted long enough for me to walk 12 feet without collapsing. The nurses celebrated like I climbed Mount Hood. All I could think about was how badly I wanted to tell Olivia. Olivia lowered herself onto the couch beside the window without taking her eyes off him. Sebastian's voice remained calm but rough around the edges as he continued reading. I saw her photography page online tonight. She posted a picture of rain on Burnside Bridge. I stared at it for 20 minutes because somehow she still captures loneliness in a way nobody else can. Olivia pressed trembling fingers against her mouth. She remembered posting that photograph at 2 in the morning, during one of the hardest weeks of her life. She never imagined Sebastian had seen it. Sebastian opened another letter. December 14th. Snow started falling today. Olivia always complains Portland drivers forget how roads work the second snow appears. A faint smile touched his lips briefly. I miss hearing her laugh in the passenger seat. Olivia closed her eyes because hearing him remember tiny details hurt more than grand declarations ever could. Hours seemed to blur quietly around them as Sebastian continued reading one letter after another. Some were painfully short. Others wandered for pages filled with thoughts he never shared with anyone else. There were letters about nightmares after surgery. Letters about seeing her favorite coffee shop while sitting in traffic. Letters where he apologized over and over for disappearing even when he believed she would never forgive him. One letter made Olivia break down completely. April 18th, Sebastian read softly. Today I drove past the hospital and realized Eleanor Hayes has now been gone longer than I got to know her. That thought destroyed me a little. She once told me love means showing up every day even when it hurts. I think about that sentence constantly because I failed at it when Olivia needed me most. Olivia wiped tears from her cheeks helplessly. Stop apologizing, she whispered shakily. Sebastian looked up immediately. Why? Olivia shook her head slowly. Because I was hurting too. And I never once stopped to ask what happened to you either. Silence settled gently between them. Not empty silence this time. Understanding. Sebastian carefully set the letter aside before walking toward the old record player near the bookshelf. Your mother used to play this song whenever you got overwhelmed, he said quietly. Soft jazz crackled through the speakers, seconds later filling the room with warmth and memory. Olivia laughed weakly through tears. She said, "No heartbreak survives Ella Fitzgerald." Sebastian smiled for the first time all day. Real, small, beautiful in a way that made Olivia's chest ache unexpectedly. Then his smile faded slightly as he reached into the final envelope at the bottom of the stack. Unlike the others, this one looked newer. The paper crisp and untouched. Sebastian stared at it for several seconds before speaking. I wrote this one last week after I heard about your mother. Olivia's heartbeat slowed painfully. Sebastian looked at her carefully. I never planned to give it to you. Olivia stood slowly and crossed the room until only inches separated them. Read it anyway, she whispered. Sebastian looked down at the final letter for so long Olivia thought he might refuse. The soft jazz playing through the old speakers wrapped around the room like a memory neither of them could fully escape. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed silver beneath the evening lights. Sebastian slowly unfolded the paper with careful hands. Then he began reading. Olivia, if you are hearing this letter, then it means your mother is gone, and somehow that feels impossible to write. Eleanor Hayes was one of the only people who ever saw me as more than my last name. She taught me that kindness is not weakness and love is not possession. I think part of me loved her because she raised someone like you. Olivia lowered her eyes immediately as fresh tears filled them. Sebastian continued quietly. I spent 3 years trying to convince myself staying away was the right thing. That maybe losing me gave you a chance at a peaceful life. But grief has a way of making people honest. And the truth is, there has not been a single day where I did not miss you. His voice weakened slightly on the final sentence, and for the first time all night Olivia saw how deeply these years had scarred him too. Sebastian swallowed carefully before reading the last paragraph. If fate is kind enough to let our paths cross again someday, I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect another chance. I only hope when you think of me eventually, it hurts a little less. Silence filled the room after the letter ended. Heavy, tender, real. Olivia stared at him through blurred vision while emotions she had buried for years finally unraveled completely inside her chest. She remembered every lonely birthday, every sleepless night, every moment she whispered his name into empty rooms while pretending she hated him enough to stop loving him. But love had never disappeared. It had simply been buried beneath pain. Sebastian carefully folded the letter again and looked away. I should go, he said softly. Olivia's heart tightened instantly. Why? He gave a faint, tired smile. Because I have already taken enough from your life. Olivia shook her head before he could turn away. No, Sebastian looked back at her quietly. Olivia stepped closer until only inches separated them again. You did not take my life from me, Sebastian. Her voice trembled slightly. You were part of it. Emotion flickered visibly across his face. Raw and unguarded. Olivia glanced down at the engagement ring still resting in her hand. 3 years ago, this ring represented a future that never happened. But standing here, now she realized something painful and beautiful at the same time. The love between them had survived anyway. Bruised, delayed, but alive. Sebastian's voice lowered carefully. Olivia, after everything that happened, I do not know how to do this anymore. Olivia let out a small tearful laugh. Neither do I. For a second, they simply stood there listening to the old jazz music and distant city sounds drifting through the windows. Then Olivia reached forward slowly and took his hand for the first time in 3 years. Sebastian inhaled sharply at the contact like he had forgotten what hope felt like. Olivia looked at him through tears and whispered the truth she should have admitted long ago. I think hating you was easier than admitting how much losing you destroyed me. Sebastian closed his eyes briefly, holding her hand tighter. Losing you destroyed me too. Olivia looked down at the ring once more before placing it carefully back into his palm. Sebastian's expression fell slightly until she smiled through tears and softly said, When you ask me again someday, I want it to be without secrets this time. For the first time in years, Sebastian truly smiled. Not like a billionaire standing in front of cameras. Not like a man pretending everything was under control. Just Sebastian, the man who once drove across state lines for cheesecake because he loved her. the man who never stopped writing letters to someone he thought would never forgive him. And as the city lights shimmered across the river outside Unit 214, Olivia finally understood something her mother had known all along. Some love stories do not end when people fall apart. Sometimes they wait quietly through all the pain until the truth finally finds its way home.